You did not agree to this. There was no contract, no warning label, no moment where someone sat you down and explained what was about to happen to the most complex object in the known universe, the 3 pounds of tissue sitting inside your skull. You just downloaded an app. And yet, right now, at this very moment, the architecture of your brain is different from what it was 5 years ago. Not metaphorically different. Not, you've grown as a person, different. Physically, structurally, neurologically different. The connections between your neurons, the pathways that determine how you think, what you crave, how long you can focus, what makes you feel pleasure, have been quietly, incrementally, and permanently reshaped. Not by trauma, not by illness, by scrolling. And the most unsettling part? The process is still happening. Right now. Every time you open an app, every time you pull down to refresh, every time you linger on a video for 3 more seconds than you meant to, you are participating in the largest uncontrolled neurological experiment in human history. No one asked for your consent, because no one needed to. To understand what is happening to your brain, you first need to understand one of the most powerful and most exploited properties of the human mind, neuroplasticity. It sounds complicated. It is not. Neuroplasticity simply means this: your brain changes based on what you do with it. Every experience, every habit, every repeated behavior physically alters the neural pathways in your brain. Pathways that are used frequently become stronger, faster, more automatic. Pathways that are neglected weaken and fade. The neuroscientist Donald Hebb described this in 1949 with a phrase that has since become foundational in brain science. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time 2 neurons activate at the same time, say, the neuron triggered by boredom and the neuron that reaches for your phone, their connection strengthens. The behavior becomes easier, then automatic, then invisible. In plain English, your brain is not a fixed machine. It is a living system that rewires itself around whatever you repeatedly expose it to. And for the past decade, you have been repeatedly exposing it to an environment specifically engineered to maximize one thing: your engagement. Not your happiness, not your focus, not your well-being, your engagement. These are not the same thing. And that difference is everything. Let's talk about dopamine. You have heard this word before. Most people associate it with pleasure, the rush of eating something delicious, the warmth of being praised, the satisfaction of completing a task. But dopamine is not actually a pleasure chemical. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan spent decades making this distinction. Dopamine is a wanting chemical. It drives anticipation, craving, the compulsion to seek. It is what makes you reach for something, not what makes you enjoy it once you have it. This is a critical distinction, because the social media scroll is not designed to satisfy you. It is designed to keep you wanting. Every swipe downward on your feed is a behavior psychologists call a variable reward schedule. It was first described by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner in the 1950s through experiments with pigeons. When a pigeon received a food pellet every single time it pressed the lever, it would press the lever steadily and stop when full. But when the food pellet arrived randomly, sometimes after 1 press, sometimes after 20, the pigeon pressed obsessively, relentlessly. It could not stop because it never knew when the next reward was coming. You are the pigeon. Your thumb is the lever. Your feed is the variable reward machine. Every scroll might reveal something funny, something outrageous, something that makes you feel seen, or validated, or horrified. You do not know which it will be. And that uncertainty, that neurological suspense, is what makes it almost impossible to stop. The dopamine system does not respond to the reward. It responds to the possibility of reward. And social media has turned that possibility into an infinite, frictionless, always available loop. Now here is where it gets structural. In 2019, a team of researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development published findings on what they called the attention span crisis. Their research showed that over the past 2 decades, the average time a human being spent focused on a single screen, not just a phone, any screen, before switching attention had dropped dramatically. In 2004, the average focus window was 2.5 minutes. By 2020, it had fallen to 47 seconds. 47 seconds. That is not a lifestyle choice. That is not laziness. That is a measurable, documented change in how the human brain allocates attention, driven by a decade of training it to expect constant novelty, instant switching, and zero friction between one piece of content and the next. Your brain did not lose its ability to focus. It was trained out of it. The prefrontal cortex, the region of your brain responsible for sustained attention, long-term planning, and impulse control, requires practice to function at full capacity, just like a muscle. And just like a muscle, it atrophies when it is not used. When your brain spends hours each day in rapid, shallow switching mode, the neural pathways supporting deep focus weaken. Not because something went wrong, because the brain, true to its design, adapted to the environment it was given. The environment you were given was not designed for your cognitive health. It was designed for advertiser revenue. But the rewiring goes deeper than attention. Researcher Jean Twenge at San Diego State University has spent over a decade tracking generational mental health data. Her findings, published across multiple studies and summarized in her book iGen, reveal a sharp inflection point in adolescent mental health beginning around 2012. The year smartphone ownership became widespread among teenagers. Depression rates climbed. Anxiety rates climbed. Rates of loneliness climbed. Even as young people were, by every measurable standard, more digitally connected than any generation in history. The data suggested something deeply counterintuitive. The more socially connected your screen told you that you were, the more isolated your nervous system felt. Why? Because the brain did not evolve to process social comparison at scale. For the vast majority of human history, your social world was small. A tribe of perhaps 150 people, as anthropologist Robin Dunbar famously calculated. You compared yourself to people you knew personally, people whose full lives you could see, people whose struggles were as visible as their successes. Social media collapsed that boundary entirely. Now your brain, still running on ancient social comparison hardware, is simultaneously processing the highlight reels of thousands of strangers, the most photogenic moments, the most successful launches, the most perfectly captioned grief. And it is running this comparison algorithm constantly, automatically, beneath your conscious awareness. The result is a nervous system in chronic low-grade threat mode. Not because anything is actually wrong, but because the ancient part of your brain, the part that evolved to track your social standing within a small tribe, is now receiving signals that suggest you are perpetually falling behind. Imagine waking up 10 years ago. You reach for your phone, but there is nothing to reach for in the way there is today. Your morning begins with silence, or conversation, or the texture of your own thoughts. Your brain boots up slowly. It has time to consolidate the night's memories, to wander, to make the quiet connections between ideas that happen only in unscheduled mental space. Now imagine waking up today. Before your eyes fully adjust to the light, your thumb is already moving. Within 30 seconds, you have consumed the emotional residue of dozens of strangers' lives. A political argument, a stunning vacation photo, a video of a child laughing, a tragedy somewhere in the world, a product you did not know you wanted, an opinion that makes your blood pressure rise. Your brain has gone from zero to maximum social emotional load in under a minute, and it will stay at that load, flickering, switching, reacting, for much of the day. This is not neutral. Every emotional reaction triggers a neurochemical response. Every piece of outrage-inducing content activates the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center. Every notification fires a small dopamine signal. Over thousands of repetitions, these patterns carve channels in your neural architecture, channels that become the default routes your brain travels. You do not just use your phone differently than people did 10 years ago. You think differently. You feel differently. Your baseline state of mind has shifted in ways that are subtle enough to be invisible from the inside, but measurable enough to show up clearly in brain imaging studies. Now for the counterintuitive part. None of this means the technology is the enemy. That framing is too simple, and it leads nowhere useful. The same neuroplasticity that makes your brain vulnerable to exploitation also makes it capable of recovery. The same mechanisms that carve the channels of distraction can carve new ones. Channels of focus, depth, intentionality. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford University has been vocal about what he calls directed focus training, the practice of deliberately sustaining attention on a single task, not because it feels comfortable, but specifically because it does not. The discomfort of resisting distraction is the neurological signal that rewiring is occurring. The friction is the point. In plain English, every time you resist the urge to check your phone and stay with a difficult task instead, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways of attention. Every time you sit with boredom instead of immediately reaching for stimulation, you are rebuilding the mental architecture that the scroll has been quietly dismantling. The brain that was rewired by 10 years of scrolling can be rewired again. It simply requires the same ingredient that created the problem: repetition. Deliberate, consistent, uncomfortable repetition. In the other direction. Here is the divide that is quietly forming in the world right now. On one side, people who do not know this is happening, who experience restlessness, difficulty concentrating, a vague sense of anxiety that seems to have no source, and who reach for their phones to soothe it, who are, in doing so, deepening the very neural patterns that created the discomfort. On the other side, people who understand the mechanism, who recognize the pull for what it is, not a personal failing, not a character flaw, but a trained neurological response to an engineered environment, and who are, with that understanding, beginning to make different choices. This is the new form of literacy, not reading and writing, not coding, understanding how your own brain works, and who is currently doing the writing on it. Organizations like Pinnacle AI Solutions work at exactly this intersection, helping people and businesses not just navigate AI tools, but develop genuine cognitive sovereignty in an age where the most powerful technologies in history are competing for control of your most valuable asset. Not your data, not your money, your attention. Because your attention is not just an economic resource for advertisers. It is the medium through which your entire life is experienced. Every relationship, every creative idea, every moment of genuine connection, every decision that matters, all of it passes through the narrow gate of where your attention actually goes. And right now, that gate is being held open by a machine that does not care what you do with your life, only how long you stay on the screen. You did not agree to this, but you are living with it. Your brain, the same brain that wrote symphonies, solved equations, raised children, built civilizations, has been quietly, incrementally reshaped by an app you downloaded for free. The question is not whether this happened. The science is unambiguous. The question is, what you do now that you know, because neuroplasticity does not stop. It never stops. Every moment you are alive, your brain is rewiring itself around whatever you give it. The only question is whether you are giving it something intentional, or whether you are letting a variable reward machine make that choice for you. You did not agree to the first rewiring, but you can choose the next one.